Hi everyone, it's Natalie here, and I just wanted to come on and talk about the Hierophant. I have here the first edition Mariel and the second edition Mariel, and as much as I've had to say about the Hierophant in the first edition, it just made me I realized a need the other night, I guess I should say, when I was getting ready to post keywords and so forth, to really talk about the difference between the Hierophants and what it is that I'm responding to and why that's perhaps important. And why I've recognized a need to accept the Hierophant in the new deck. Okay, so I wanted to go into greater depth about that. So first of all, in order to understand why this Hierophant is so brilliant and why I love it so much, we have to talk about why, so sorry about all of the congestion, why this Hierophant is perhaps a more functional one. And, you know, if we think about the traditional Hierophants that we'll find, say, in the Thoth deck, or the Rider-Waite-Smith, we're looking at a Hierophant, whoops, just confusing all my stuff all here. We're looking at a Hierophant that is incredibly conformist, orthodox. This is the idea of a papal figure. It is the person, that is appointed by God, to oversee the Word of God and transmit it to the people in a way that makes them all come together under the same exact moral umbrella, an agreement about what that umbrella should look like, and which makes it very difficult to challenge that authority. They have divine right. This is what kings in Europe have based their power and authority on for centuries, right? Is this idea of divine right. Over the people, over the government, over everything. And it isn't just a king, obviously. It's also the Pope. It's also, it's any major religious figure that we would have in any, or spiritual figure. But I would say too, this is, you can read any book you want, right? There's tons of them out there that will talk in greater depth about what the Hierophant is, what it signifies. And I'm just specifically addressing at this moment those aspects of the Hierophant that are very traditional and on the surface, okay? Because that plays a part into where we're going here. So when we read it as a reversed card, we get a big difference, right? That is this idea turned on its head. So then we get a plethora of possibilities. We've got a spiritual leader who has chosen to take a different route, a different path, a different way of looking at the world, of embodying what it means to have divine authority or divine right. Both good and bad things, right? It could mean what we get with the Hierophant, I feel, in the first edition of the Mariel. So this is much more of a heterodox version of the Hierophant. And by that I mean, this is a Hierophant who upright is embodying a lot of the qualities of these Hierophants when they're reversed. But not only that, it's pointing to very specific qualities, right? This is an utterly benevolent, integrated, humane, humble, accepting, loving embodiment of spiritual leadership or spiritual authority, right? You could go to this Hierophant and tell her that you've done the most hideous thing on the face of the planet, and she will immediately tell you, of course, that was the wrong thing to do. She will have absolutely every ability to see why that morally was incorrect. And she will not stop loving you, offering you compassion, and helping you find comfort and the ability to forgive yourself despite that, right? It will be unconditional. We're still looking at an embodiment of patriarchy, but in reverse, we might be looking at the overthrow of patriarchal structure. There are actually many possibilities. What am I saying? There really, the sky's the limit, I guess. Yeah. There are many, many possibilities, but what we're getting here is the ability for, sorry, I just dropped this. What we're getting here is the possibility that this Hierophant can be something other than what the orthodoxy of the church regulates and has decided is right. You know, I say the church or God, the spirit, the Buddha. It could be almost any, you know, any type of spiritual leader, someone with spiritual authority. Okay. So when we look at the Mariel Tarot, what we have here is the more orthodox represented in the second edition, and we have the heterodox version in the first edition. Now, that said, she clearly intends for this second edition Hierophant to embody all of those qualities anyway. It still feels, if you look at the face, it still feels like it might be the same face, the same model, the same individual. But obviously the face and the skin have not been made quite so pallid and pale. We're missing the Eye of Horus as part of that design and part of the integration of what's in the face. She's holding this key, which has what looks to me like the Tower of Babel on it. So there's still, you know, this is the Whore of Babylon on this one. So we're still getting a sense that there's the possibility that authenticity and that being who you are holds the key to spiritual life and integration. We have the caduceus of these two, you know, she's talking about using them in this deck as these, you know, the two babies, the names of which always escape me, the horrors, or no, the harlots and abominations of the world. So in theory, these snakes are, so the winged serpents are supposed to be the harlots and abominations of the world. I mean, that makes very little sense symbolically to me. I mean, I get more of a sense looking at these of there being like divinity and the power to transform into a place of authenticity and to accept the duality of our nature as something that's inherently part of our DNA from this one. But I definitely don't get the sense of the harlots and abominations of the world coming to the, you know, the Hierophant's breast to be fed, nurtured, loved, accepted, forgiven, and healed in the way that I do with this one. It just isn't there. That said, I don't mind this new Hierophant. It doesn't feel to me nearly as oppressive. You know, the way that she's drawn it with this key, she's offered the key with the hand, you know, gesturing to the key. It's over the heart space. We're still accepting and integrating aspects of ourselves, others, society, life, etc., that are not comfortable or that are difficult, that we associate with sin, that we associate with badness in general or evil. It's still something that is worthy of love and divine acceptance and forgiveness, you know. And it feels to me like it holds that as a wish, right, or as an intention to be integrated within the orthodoxy of religion, of culture, of authority, etc. So that, in short, although probably not very short, I haven't looked at my camera, but that, in short, is what we're looking at here. So then what happens if you reverse these Hierophants? And keeping in mind, too, I really don't read reversed cards. I know what the shadow side and the what's in light, what's in shadow of each of them, and then I look at that in context with the cards around. Frequently, I will know if we're hitting shadow because I'm looking at the rest of the cards. I'm looking at the particular card that's right, that are right side up, and thinking, whoa, that one just goes clunk. So mentally, I think, well, what if it were reversed? Ah, yes. Okay, so we are seeing shadow here. And other times I don't have to do that. It's just very obvious to me immediately that we're looking at shadow. But if we look at then, if you are someone who reads reversals, and certainly there are plenty of people that do and find it to be an utterly necessary part of their practice. Let's contemplate it. Let's reverse it and contemplate it. So let's start here. If we reverse the qualities of this particular Hierophant the way that they are being represented, what we get, because we are also getting a certain amount of gender neutrality here. This could be feminine or masculine, really depending on context, preference, etc. And I actually really appreciate the gender neutrality of this Hierophant, because to me, again, they're then embodying both the masculine and feminine as an integrated part of what the divine right of God is, right? We know through depth psychology that that really, the human soul doesn't have a gender. The human body tends to find expression for it. So that they should be naturally integrated in some form when representing God feels completely right. So if we flip this over and we look at the darker side, right? This is a Hierophant who is potentially corrupt, right? Interestingly, the Hierophant right side up already, in my perspective, right, already feels like, we're looking potentially at corrupted authority. As the reader, we're working with my brain, we're working with my intellect, with my instincts, etc. And in a reading, you really, you learn what you need to learn, and you learn what you can learn, and you keep learning, but then you're reading and you have to go with the instinct that comes up. And personally, I'm very aware of my own bias about Orthodox religion of all varieties, having been formally initiated into 2 different ones and actually formally rejecting 2 different religions at this point. My perspective about religion, is very different at this point than it was, say, 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago. But looking at this, what I would say that corruption can exist with the Hierophant right side up. That's my perspective. With this Hierophant, I'm going to say that the corruption would need to be upside down in order for that to take place, or to be a part of who they are. We're overturning in other words, we're still embracing a certain amount of heterodoxy within the orthodoxy. Can you see what I'm saying? So we're still saying yes, formal religion, because we're caped and cloaked in formal religious attire. We're still representing, religion and religious ideals as they are. And yet, through the incorporation of the symbology of this particular Hierophant and the way that they've been depicted, and the things that have been left out, You know, we don't have supplicants, for example. We have supplicant. Oh, there's no supplicants, of course. Not exactly in Thoth, but in RWS there are supplicants. I do not have I don't have a Marseille deck to hand. I want to say that there aren't any supplicants in a Marseille and a TDM. I think it's just the Pope on its own. But, you know, there's a lot of things left out. In this card, we have the Tetragrammaton, we have Yod, He, Vav, He. So we have the human, the eagle or hawk, a bull, and a lion, right? As the sort of cherubim or the, you know, the beings that drive the vehicle, or that surround the vehicle in Ezekiel's vision, okay? We've got that represented here through, so tetramorph is any of those four elephants, looking at elephants, any of those four elements that are pulled together, right, and represented in some way. Tetragrammaton is actually the spelling out of that through language, right, through the Hebrew language. So, and it's the name of God. So this would be the divine authority given to this Hierophant, and the key to that lies within her heart, and it's from her heart that she is nourishing these harlots and abominations. Okay, here we've left that out. That has been, I guess, very intentionally deserted in this particular version. So again, when we reverse this one, we have a clearer, I feel, a much clearer idea. What are the shadow aspects? You know, it could be someone who is intending towards integration and has not integrated. It could be someone who intends all of these things and yet still finds themselves in a place of judgment, of holding this key outside of themselves and not fully embodying it. You know, shady behavior, shadowy dealings, etc. Going behind the backs of people to make decisions unilaterally, in ways that are harmful. I mean, the sky's the limit. Again, you know, the sky's the limit. Similarly, with this one, if we look at her upside down, we have rejection. We have judgment. It's much more straightforward, right? If this is unconditional love, this would be conditional love or rejection. If right side up is the embodiment of unconditional love and benevolence, the reversal of this could be someone who has not done enough of their own work to handle that. And so thereby we get what I feel is closer to the right side up variation and version of the Hierophant. So to me, you know, when we go this way here, we're going this way here potentially. It certainly has that feel. Right? We can make as many intellectual arguments as we want, right? We can go back chapter and verse to the book of Thoth, or you know, any additional scholarly works about either of these decks, written by noted authorities on the subject, and we could easily make an argument the other way. However, I'm positing my own thesis simply as being, you know, that this is a big part of why this Hierophant feels kind of disruptive in for a lot of people actually, within the context of this deck. Because this Hierophant, the Hierophant's medicine, generally speaking, is to represent orthodoxy. Right? Part of the medicine of the deck, as it is that it gives us this version of truth. And it is a version of truth. There is a definite, I mean, this exists. We experience this every day. I don't like it. I think a lot of us don't like it. A lot of us find it oppressive. disruptive, upsetting, lacking the potential that lies in such a position, etc. And yet it is the truth, right? And I feel like why this is such a successful Hierophant is because I have a strong sense that we're integrating both, the Hierophant from a more traditional Golden Dawn-based deck, and we're integrating it with the principles and ideas that she has in her original deck. The difference I would suggest is that in the meantime, Marie White probably had some space to really examine where she was coming from in the creation of both of these decks, or in the creation of the deck, and in this card in particular, and recognized perhaps what it was that people were reacting to, and chose to find a way to represent this and this in the same card. And it comes out more like this. So rather than gesturing to an authority, from above, or conveying that authority to others, from coming through in order to come out of, etc., what we have is the acknowledgement that the authority of God that we all want to find already lies within us. That said, I still love this one. I would also argue that this deck, the first edition, has a medicine of its own that is utterly, utterly beautiful. And unlike any other, this is the treasure of the abyss. So if we're talking about landscapes of the abyss, this is one expression of the treasures that come out of that abyss. And certainly when I was in a position to take over as the priest of the Zen temple in Chicago, when I was still in seminary and was asked to do that, I was also asked to give up my dog. My dog is a rescue dog. I had no desire to give up one of my babies. I'd made a commitment to take that particular rejected animal that I'd made a commitment to and see him through to the end of his life. And so I chose, in the face of a lot of this, I chose instead to let it go. And with the intention that I would rather embody this outside of a church, outside of religion, outside of the structure of authority, as the expression of what God through a human being, or what divinity embodied through a human being might truly look like. And I feel like that is, these are the kinds of treasures that come out of the abyss, right? I also recognize that it is a further stage in one's integration and development to get to a place where we could leave this behind, the need to embody this or look at it this way. Not behind, what am I saying? To integrate it a little further and make it more palatable as something that people can understand and accept in their own way without having to be completely and utterly shocked by it. And yet, the shock of this is part of its medicine. So there's a number of ways that we could look at that, right? Yeah, there's so much more I could say. I mean, the other problem is that once you get past this particular point in, of spiritual development, not past it, once you've been with it for long enough, you begin to recognize the brokenness and the pain that exists in those who are in these positions of authority. And they too become as lovable as the harlots and the abominations. And really the only way to bring them back into the fold, so to speak, right, into a place where they too can find greater access, you know, to that kind of divine love, is through finding a way to make this appearance more acceptable, to bring more integrity to it. You know, we're just looking at very, very different ways of expressing and embodying what this means. And I have to say, after working with both of these decks for a while now, I do find that, although I'm not using the silver one right now, I mostly just use these for videos and photos. I still am using my kind of scruffy looking one, because I'll let it wear out fully until I pick it up. But you know, the medicine in either deck is still really powerful. But the medicine of the first edition is definitely a much more raw version of that. So I have not, you know, when it comes to finding a new keyword for the Hierophant in the second edition, I have not managed to boil that down yet to a place that feels right. Even though I can obviously speak about it at great length, this one to me, you know, I could call this one unconditional love. And I thought I did use that for a time, and benevolence came back to me as the key word for her, because within benevolence, there's also forgiveness, there's also grace, acceptance, generosity. It feels like it holds more within it than unconditional love to me. Whereas this one is doing something different. And I haven't fully, you know, it's the marriage of orthodoxy and heterodoxy in a way that definitely functions better, but I haven't found the word for it yet. So there we go. So that's my take on the Hierophants in these two decks. Obviously, I have a lot to say about them. I will probably do a significant amount of writing about them. I haven't done that yet. Who knows where I'll put that, but I'll find a place to put it. Yeah. Fun times, fun times. Maybe we'll do this with some of the other cards in the deck specifically to this particular deck, because I think where we're changing the meanings and the names of the cards, or the meanings rather, the meanings of the cards through their depiction, you know, it really changes the medicine of the deck again. Okay, thanks everybody. I hope you got through this one okay, and I'll see you again soon with another one. Take care. Bye.